So I think that we're pretty much conclusively done with Chapter 2. So hopefully by this point you've read Chapter 2, looked through the PowerPoints. If you haven't, I strongly recommend you do that. So what we're going to do today, rather than do a lecture, is we're going to work on another tutorial, creating another Wpf application. We're also going to hit a topic that we haven't really hit yet, switch statements. You may have gotten them in another language like C++ or Java. A switch statement is just a great big if statement. So what we're going to need are the instructions, either the PDF or the doc, and then the code for it is in this RTF document. I'm going to go ahead and open the RTF document and just take a peek at it, make sure it's there. Yeah, that looks good. It's all there, isn't it? Hope so. And I'm going to open the instructions. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a Wpf application, just as we did in short assignment 3. Well, I don't know which short assignment we did that in, but what is this? Really? Okay. What we want it to have, we want it to look like this. I am recording, right? Alrighty. It's going to have a couple of labels, 3 labels specifically. One's going to say fave number, one's going to say fave beetle. This is a multi-line label, but we just do that by hitting return or something like that. And then a result label that we will fill in with our result. Then there's going to be 2 text entry boxes where they're going to type in numbers, their favorite number and then their favorite beetle, and then a vote button. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go into Visual Studio. New project. C# Windows WPF. And we're going to drag out 3 labels, 2 text boxes, and a button. And we're going to rename the text boxes just to make them a little bit clearer. One's going to be text input 1 and one's going to be text input 2. So where's my toolbox? I don't see my toolbox, so View, Toolbox. I'm going to drag it over here to the left. No, that didn't work. Here we go. Alrighty. So we need a button. Drag that button out. We need 3 labels. Grab 3 labels. And we need 2 text boxes. Alright, so if we go back and look, the first label is supposed to say favorite number. You might just be able to double click on it and it'll let you type in some new text there. If that didn't work, you can click on it and go to View Properties. Alright, I'm spacing out. Where's the properties?
On the right where the toolbox was.
It is there, but what if I closed it? How would I bring it back open? Well, we found it last time. Hopefully we can find it again when we need it.
Property manager at the bottom?
Is that what it's called? Alrighty. So you select that, you choose View, Property Manager. Same thing, right? No, that's not it. Alright, forget it. I'll have to find out how to find it, just in case I closed it. If you can't find it, pause it, Google it, come back. Alright, so you can change its text here using properties. You can change it directly on the editor, or you can come down here and edit the XML for it. Click on fave number, it'll take you to the XML, and we can change its content right there. We're also going to change the name of the text box, but let's do that in a minute. Now this one's a multi-line label. Let's see if we can get this going. One thing, I'm going to make it larger, wider. Could also make it taller. All right, then double click it. Fave Beetle. 1, John. 2, Paul. 3, George. 4, Ringo. I wonder how Ringo felt always being listed last. What order is this? This must be in order of importance in the band when they made the band. Because it's certainly not by age. Ringo was the oldest and George was the... Anyways, y'all don't want to need to know all this. Okay, so that's not looking real hot because it's kind of truncating our text. I'm going to stretch the label out a little more. We could change the text. We can, make all this stuff look different. And this last one, the text is going to be results or result. And the button, we want it to say something like calculate or vote. I think we had it. And again, if you can't change it on screen, you can always go to properties or you can edit the XML. All right. Now, so far when we've done WPF applications, we've left the variable names alone. So they just had boring names, like text input, things like that. But now we're going to get a little more specific. We want the upper text box to be named text input 1, the lower text box to say text input 2, and the button to say button calculate, and the label to say label output. So let's take care of the text input fields too. There we go. So we're not changing the text in there, although we probably should. Instead, we're going to change the name of the variable that's associated with it. Has no name. I'm going to do the same thing with the next text box. Go to the properties, call it text input 2. The button, I'm going to give it a new name. It's going to be, what did I want to call it? Doesn't really matter, but button calculate. And then lastly, the label that we're using to store our output, we're going to call label output. I follow the convention of leaving the word button in it and then following it by a description of the button. Not everybody does that. You could just call it calculate, right, without the word button in front of it. You could just call it output rather than the word label output. So the last one, go to properties, change it to label output. So these are all in the instructions in case you can't read this microscopic writing. This one was, and they're also down here in the XML. Maybe we can zoom in on the XML. Yeah, now we're talking. Okay, so that was text input 1 there. That was text input 2 there. Label output. And button calculate. And the other two are just labels. They're pure. They're purely decorative. So we don't need to give them control names unless we were going to change their values programmatically, which we're not going to do. So before we actually go and do the code, I'm just going to show you a bit of silliness. You can change the formatting of this stuff. Like fave number. Let's go to properties, text, change the font. Source sans pro black. Let's make it a bigger font. Is this important? Do you have to do this? No. You know, there you go. I'm not going to change the rest of it. Looking to see if there's any additional controls we want to throw in here, and I think that would be a bad idea at this point. Alright, so now that we've renamed all of our controls, let's double click on the vote button to create a handler method. And here we go. That added our button calculate click. This picked up the name that we specified in the properties. If we called it something else, you know, it'd have a different name. Is the name of the method that handles a button all that important? No. If you go back to the main window editor then and go to properties, you'll see actually I'm not seeing it now. You ought to be okay. See the lightning bolt up here? If you have that, there's a little wrench which is all the properties, but the lightning bolt shows the events that it handles. Right now we only have one event. I'm not even seeing the event for it. Have I clicked off the button? Yeah, I did. Oh no, my nightmare. I closed the properties window. Really? Alright, there it is. In this case it's under Other Windows, Properties window. Comes back. And see, if you do a click, that's the method that it calls. If you felt like making it call another event, you could change that property right there. If you delete a method, you're going to have to come back here into the event handler list and remove it from there as well. Alright, so go back here. What we need is our RTF code. Code from the RTF file. All of this stuff, several pages worth. Control A to copy it all. Control A selects all. Control C to copy. Come back over here and inside your method, Control V to paste. And there's our code. Looks like we already have a syntax error. I must have made a mistake. Okay, this was supposed to say text input 1 and text input 2. What did I actually call them?
Capital something or other.
Oh, I had capital T's rather than lowercase t's. Alright, now I'm curious. Is changing their names as easy as changing them in the XML? That should have been a lowercase t, text input 1. This should have been a lowercase t, text input 2. Let's go back to our code and see if that all magically, yep, that's pretty neat. Okay. So throughout here we see these region and end region, region and end region, region and end region. What that defines is a little place where you can click a plus or a minus sign over here on the border, which you probably can't see, but like on line number 48 on mine there was a plus. We can minimize all these regions. That kind of simplifies the code so that we could come back and expand them, you know, work on them one by one. So we look at the code, what is it doing? We've got a couple of strings. Something called S number, one called S beetle, and a string for output. And then we have some numbers, D number and D beetle. So what we're going to do is S number.
Oh, did you uploaded a new document, didn't you?
It's on the Dropbox.
Okay. Yeah, I have the old ones.
So what we need, what it does is it grabs the text out of text input field 1 and stores it in the first string. Text field 2 gets stored in the second string. Then we try to parse those into numbers. So we do BOK is equal to double dot triparse. We've seen that before. But we have two fields that we're reading, so I did this. BOK is equal to BOK and. What that does is it goes ahead and does this conversion and then mixes that one with that BOK. And so if either one of these failed, then BOK is going to be set to false. But if both of them are set to true, then BOK is going to be set to true, because that's the definition of and, is that if both of them are true, then the result is true. But if either one of them is false or both of them is false, then BOK is false. All right. Then we're going to have something that is built from these strings. So we declare 4 strings. Down here, underneath our whole shebang, we create an output string, which is string 1 plus string 2 plus string 3 plus string 4 with /n's to space them out, end lines. And then the last thing it does is it creates, labeled output.content. So if we run it now, it's not going to do a dang thing. Well, there we go. I'm getting tired of seeing text box here. We ought to take that text out. I think I'll do that right now. I'm going to come back over here, and for this thing that says text box, I'm going to modify the XML so that it doesn't say anything. So text inbox 1, where it says text equals text box, I'm just going to make it say text equals empty. You know what? That's going to crash if they don't type in numbers for both of them. Let's go ahead and fill them with data. Put a 1 there and put a 1 there, so that if they just click vote right away, then at least it doesn't crash when it tries to read those. We could try it the other way. Let's empty them out completely, run it, and what we'll see is that when triparse tries to parse an empty field, we get an error. It says invalid input, inputs must be numbers. So I guess that's good enough. I like that. All right, go back to our code now. Let's actually expand one of our regions. Let's work on string 1. String 1 says, write an if statement that will compare D number to 10. If greater than 10, set string 1 to greater than 10. Else string 1 says less than 10. Well, what if it's equal to 10? Whatever. So, if D number is greater than 10, then string 1 equals greater than 10. Else if, let's handle all the situations. D number is less than 10, string 1 equals less than 10. Because they need to know this. They need to know if their favorite number is greater than 10 or not. And then else, if both of those are not true, then our only alternative is that they're the same. Equals 10. Why did I put the English word there? Just so that it doesn't look like it's the original number that they typed in, They saw that something happened. It got translated into an English word rather than a digits. Let's test it out. Nah, let's not test it out yet. Yeah, let's do test it out. Start, type in a favorite number. We're going to have to give some kind of input down here for the fav beetle, just so that it doesn't crash when we click vote. And it says less than 10 down there. Not that you can read that tiny print. And if I type in 100 and click vote, it says greater than 10. I'm thinking that when this label goes and then we have 4 lines on it, it's not going to display right. And then if I type in 10 exactly, it says equals 10. Well, I'll probably have to come back and resize my window or move that label so that it has room for 4 lines. While I'm at it, I'm going to make all of my text larger so that it's visible on the screen. I'm not going to change the input boxes, but why not at least change that to be a large font. Source sans black. That's a little more visible. And then result, source sans black. move it up a little bit so that we have room for 4 lines, maybe stretch the window down a little bit. All right, I think we'll be good. Whoops, that didn't stretch the window down a little bit. I'm going to undo that change. Back to the code. We've handled string 1 now. I can minimize it. Let's expand the string 2 region. Click the little plus sign next to string 2. Write an if statement. If D number is evenly divisible by 2, if it's true, set string 2 equal to even, else set string 2 equal to odd. Remember how to calculate if something is even or not. You modulus it by 2, and if that result is 0, then x is even. So if D number %2 is equal to 0, then string 2 is equal to even number, semicolon, else string 2 is equal to odd number, end quote, semicolon. I think I'll test it out again. Compile early, compile often is my motto. All right, again, I'm going to have to type in some garbage, a 0 for the Fave Beetle, but let's type in 10, and it ought to say that the number is 10 and that it's even. Equals 10 and it's an even number. All right, I'm feeling good about that. So I'm going to minimize that region. Then we're going to work on 3 and 4. Pause the recording for a moment. All right, so string 3, I believe, is going to be dependent upon the switch statement. The syntax of the switch statement is something like this. Switch based on a variable. And then case, like if x was equal to 1. Do something. Whatever it's supposed to do. And then break. Case 2, do something else. Whatever it's supposed to do. Break. And then a default. Do the third thing. You don't need a break since the default is the last here. So the way that works is whatever the value of x is, it gets evaluated and then it jumps to the right block of code. If x equaled 1, it would do that stuff. If x equaled 2, it would do that stuff. If x did not equal either of them, it would jump down to the default. And what the break means is as soon as you're done executing that something, come down here, come to the end of the brace. Otherwise, it would so-called fall through and also do case 2. And then if this break wasn't here, it would also fall through and do what was in the default. So that's what a switch statement is. You can hit the index of your book, read more about it if you want. So write a switch statement that will set sfave to the name of a beetle based on your value. I've done the first case and the default for you. And we're just going to do them in order. John, Paul, George, and Ringo. All right, so if they choose 1, it's supposed to say John. Or let's be cool and put their whole name. John Lennon. And then it breaks. If they don't choose any of them, it's going to say Beatles. Who are they? How rude. Okay. So case 2, colon. This is Paul. If they choose 2, it's going to say Paul McCartney. Break. Now we just have 2 more cases, right? Case 3 and case 4. I'm tempted to do some cut and pasting, but that goes too fast. I'm going to go ahead and type it out. Case 3, sfave is equal to George Harrison. Break. And in case 4, sfave is equal to Ringo Starr. Break. And then our default case is to say Beatles, who are they? And we did put a break here, but it's not necessary because it's the last choice. Oddly enough, though, you could stick the default up at the very top of the list, and it would still compile and work, in which case you would want a break statement. Okay, so we have the contents of our switch finished. Case 1, case 2, case 3, case 4, and the default. Underneath, that's another comment. Write a statement that will assign to string 3 text that looks like this, including the value of sfave. So it's supposed to say something like, my favorite Beatle is John Lennon, or whatever. We want to use string.format and a placeholder. So string 3 is equal to string.format, capital F, even though in my comments it was lowercase. And inside the quotes, my favorite Beatle, oh, we got to capitalize Beatle, right? Beatle is placeholder 0. So curly brace, 0 in curly brace, followed by a comma, followed by our variable that contains the name. Okay, this is going to be dumb, and it's going to say, my favorite Beatle is Beatles. Who are they? Whatever. Good enough. Surely they won't choose that. And we're done with region 3 at that point. You see, we have our switch statement. And then we have a string.format statement there. So let's minimize string 3's region and make string 4's region. Notice that these region commands are just preprocessor commands. They get ignored by the compiler. They're just for the editor. Write a statement with the logic, if sfave is not equal to Ringo, set string 4 equal to you're crazy, drummer's rule. Now actually, remember I set sfave equal to Ringo star, so I'm going to have to make my if statement match that exactly. So, inside of region string 4, if sfave equals, quote, Ringo star, you know, we could just base it on that number, right? That'd be a little bit wiser, perhaps. But anyways.
What, is it sfave a string?
Yeah, sfave is a string. I was just trying to eliminate the fact that we had to spell out a whole word here when we could have just been checking a number. But good enough. So if sfave is equal to Ringo star, we're going to set string 4 equal to you're crazy, drummer's rule. All right, so that one was pretty short. We didn't even have an else or anything. We could stick on a else. Can't imagine what it would say. No, wait a minute. It's supposed to say if sfave is not equal to Ringo star. So instead of equal, I need to make it not equal Ringo star. All right, I've gone a long way without compiling it, but I think I'm done with the assignment, so I'm going to build the solution. I'm going to start the solution. My favorite number is 100. My favorite Beatle is John. I click vote, and it says greater than 10, even number. My favorite Beatle is John Lennon, and you're crazy, drummer's rule. Maybe we ought to make it say your favorite Beatle is John Lennon, you're crazy, drummer's rule. So this is a completely silly app. But the real point was just to get some more familiarity with working with WPFs. I wanted to be second nature so that you could just pop open, WPF and make your application there anytime. And
pardon? Can you say your string 3?
Yeah. So let's take a look at string 3 again. do is we cast D beetle to an int, and the reason why is switch statements, at least in most languages, need to be an integer data type. So
is ifave with the switch a? Oh, I guess I could do that fave.
Alright, so that's a switch, I fave, and then set S fave equals those. For some reason, I'll go down to the bottom of it. Oh, keep going. Yeah, for some reason, mine, when you get to that, I did that, but it, when I run mine, let's see if I put 1, 2.
We didn't.
so while I'm here, I'm going to change that my favorite beetle to your favorite beetle, just for a little bit of clarity.
My favorite beetle is blank, you're crazy, drum. That's all mine says.
All right, I'll come back there and take a look. So one problem we've seen is that if your result label is too small, I don't know why mine is automatically resizing and some other students' work, but they were seeing truncated text. So if you're not seeing all the text you expect, just blow up your result box a little bit. If you wanted to, you could go into your properties and give it a slightly different background color, you know. Don't know that I really want to. I'm not seeing where to do it anyways. Got to be pretty easy. Done it in the past. Oh well. I'm not going to set the background color of that label, obviously. But I want to. Too bad, huh? Alrighty. So we're actually done with the assignment, and I can't think of anything else cool to add to it. What would be really neat is if this was a pull-down menu, so that we would drop, you know, and we would pick John, Paul, George, Ringo. Or if it was a bullet list, you know, radio boxes, so that you could click which one of these you were. Or check boxes, so you could say, oh, I like them all. But that's kind of stuff for another day. Alrighty, I guess I'll slowly scroll down the code in case you need to see it all, and then we will be done with the lecture. So we didn't even change any of this code, so hopefully that's good. We didn't change any of that code either, so hopefully that's good. Then we had the string 1 section, which looked like this. Then we had the string 2 section, which looked like that. We had the string 3 section, which was the switch statement. First it had those 2 lines. We created a variable called ifave, and we copied dbeetle into it by casting it. Why did we do that? We wanted to convert this to an integer. There could have been an easier way to do that. I could have gotten rid of ifave and just done that cast right here like this, the integer version of dbeetle, but I'm going to undo that change. So could I have stored ifave as an integer to begin with? I mean, dbeetle, you know. Yes, I could have done integer.tryparse rather than double.tryparse way up here. But I read it as a double, and then I had to accommodate that. Okay, so here's what our switch statement looked like. And then we had an if statement. Your favorite beetle is placeholder 0. Sfave. That was the end of that region. So in region 4, we had an if statement that said if sfave not equal to Ringo star, string 4 equals your crazy drummer's roll. Alrighty, hope that was interesting, and stay tuned for the next lecture. However, wait, we need to find some homework to do. So let me pause the recorder. So the homework assignment, do exercises 14 and 15 from the book, Hope you bought the book. Just turn to number 15 because it is a continuation of 14. What are they? Problem 14 is write a program named tests that declares 5 variables to hold scores for 5 tests you have taken and assign a value to each variable. You don't have to do arrays or anything complicated that you've learned in other languages. Just call them score 1, score 2, score 3, score 4, score 5, or whatever you want. Display the average of the test scores to 2 decimal places. And then 15, modify the test program to create a new one called Tests Interactive that accepts 5 test scores from a user so that they can type them in. So the first one just assumes that you're going to say score 1 is equal to 98, score 2 is equal to 34, score 3, and then you're going to revise it to ask the user for those values. You can make it a Wpf application if you were feeling cool. You can make it a console app if that's what you want. And then also do exercises 1, 2, and 3, which are just questions like what is 21 modulus 10, and what kind of data type would you store the number of passengers on a bus? Do you need a double to hold a number of passengers? No, because you're not going to have 7.2 quintillion passengers on your bus. You could probably use an integer. Probably even use something shorter, but an integer is a good default data type for whole numbers. Alrighty, hope the homework makes sense. It'll be due in about a week, 10 days from the recording of this lecture.